All right, welcome back to another explainer. Today, we're tackling something pretty much every single reef keeper is going to face at some point: flatworms. Look, it's super easy to panic when these mysterious little pests show up in your tank, but instead of freaking out, we're going to lean on the data today to build a really systematic, totally stress-free approach to identifying and managing them. Let's get into it.
We have all been there, right? You're just relaxing, staring lovingly at your glass, checking out your corals, and suddenly, bam, you see it, a tiny, squishy little speck slowly gliding across the pane, and your heart just drops a little bit. You instantly start wondering, okay, is this just harmless background life, or am I looking at the beginning of a reef tank's absolute worst nightmare? It's really easy to hit the panic button, but if we actually stop and look at the data, we can figure out exactly what we're dealing with.
So here is our game plan to get this under control. First, identifying the invaders. Second, assessing the actual threat level in your tank. Third, our first response, basically starving them out. Fourth, we'll look at targeted reef-safe treatments. And finally, number 5, preventing the inevitable comeback.
Okay, let's dive right into part 1, identifying the squishy invaders, finding the enemy in your reef.
Before we go treating anything, we absolutely have to get a positive ID. Usually we're tracking a pest called planaria. You'll notice they have this small, really soft-bodied, squishy look to them. Visually, they often look kind of like tiny blue or green eyelashes, or maybe little opaque brown or white streaks. And here's a wild fact: that vibrant green color, that actually comes from them consuming the photosynthetic algae right out of your tank. But the absolute key behavioral trait you want to watch for is how they move. They glide. They move very, very slowly along your sand bed, the glass, or your live rock. And they get way more active when a film of organics starts building up on those surfaces.
Now, it's incredibly crucial that we don't mix up a nuisance pest with actually beneficial tank life. Take a look at the flatworms on the left. See how they have soft bodies, they glide slowly, they gather up in these little clusters, and there are absolutely no shells. Now compare that to the copepods over on the right. Copepods dart around super fast in these jerky little movements, and they often have visible tiny shells or tubes. Basically, if that speck on your glass darts away the second you get close, you're probably just looking at a healthy pod population. But if it just slowly, smoothly oozes along, yeah, we're looking at a flatworm.
Which brings us to part 2, assessing tank threat levels. This is where we separate a minor symptom from a full-blown crisis.
All right, so you've got a positive ID, but hey, the source material explicitly reminds us not to panic here. Some flatworms just hang out harmlessly in the background. What we're actually looking for is a dangerous population boom. Let's break it down. If you're just spotting one flatworm every few weeks, totally normal. But if you're seeing rapid multiplication day after day, that's a warning sign. Same goes for your corals. Normal, fluffy expansion is great, but if they're retracting, showing localized irritation, or spitting out excess mucus, you've got trouble. Finally, keep an eye on your surfaces. Clean rock is exactly what we want, but a sudden, slimy organic film buildup, that is essentially an all-you-can-eat buffet for these pests. Because here's the thing, flatworms do not just magically appear out of thin air. They're opportunists. They exploit very specific environments, and they absolutely thrive in highlight or low-flow zones. Why? Because that is exactly where organic film and detritus collect. Think about it like this. If you've got a dead spot in your flow where all the waste settles, and it's just getting blasted with light from above, well, you've inadvertently created the perfect flatworm nursery. The pests themselves are really just a symptom of that specific environment.
So, moving on to part 3, first response, starve them out. Let's go over the first aid protocol for your tank.
Look, before you even think about reaching for heavy, tank-altering chemicals, we need to stabilize the patient by going straight after their food source. This is your immediate first aid protocol. The plan is actually pretty simple. Step 1, improve your detritus control. Step 2, feed a lot more conservatively. Step 3, increase your nutrient export. And Step 4, manually remove any of the individuals you can actually see.
So how do we actually execute this on a daily basis? First, get in there and do a really gentle siphon of those dead spots in your sandbed and sump during your regular water changes. Next, shorten your feeding window so extra food doesn't just settle untouched on the rocks. You might want to start target feeding your corals directly too. Also, ensure your skimmer is dialed in and your filter media is clean to maximize nutrient export. And finally, grab a turkey baster, which, let's be real, is arguably the reef keeper's single greatest weapon, and physically suck out any flatworms you spot on the glass or the rocks. We are trying to drastically lower the odds of a rapid population rebound before we even discuss medication.
All right, part 4, targeted reef-safe treatments. Here is how we escalate the intervention safely. Now, if starvation just isn't cutting it, we do have targeted treatments designed to totally disrupt flatworm biology. But listen, this requires intense, careful control. You've got options like controlled coral dips for smaller infestations or localized treatments that you apply directly to an impacted area of the tank. But notice the big emphasis here on strict monitoring of oxygenation and really careful water chemistry checks. Chemical treatments can deplete oxygen incredibly fast, especially when flatworms start dying off en masse. You have to be super careful with this.
And that actually brings us to a massively important rule of thumb from our source material. Never, ever dose chemicals during periods when your corals are already showing signs of severe stress. Think about it. If your flatworms have already pushed your corals to the absolute brink, hitting the tank with a harsh chemical medication could literally be the tipping point that crashes your entire system. We always want to consider the current health of our livestock before escalating to chemical warfare.
Finally, let's look at Part 5, preventing the inevitable comeback. We're talking long-term care and ecosystem balance. Okay, so you fought them back. Great job. But here's the catch. Treatments usually only take out the adults. What about the eggs? To stop a massive resurgence, you need to increase your daily observation around those shaded rocks and pump intakes. Keep your skimming incredibly consistent. Use staged, manual siphoning over a few weeks just to catch any stragglers that hatch. And critically, reassess your livestock quarantine protocols. You definitely don't want to go through all this work just to accidentally import a brand new batch of flatworm eggs on your next coral frag, right? If you find yourself stuck in a loop of persistent outbreaks despite doing everything right, the source data points to three main culprits. 1, you might have made an incorrect idea of the pest in the first place. 2, you might have used an incomplete dosing schedule. Or 3, and honestly this is the most common one, you have a persistent underlying organic problem in the tank. Remember our whole ecosystem balance motif from earlier? Flatworms are ultimately a symptom. Fixing your water quality, improving your flow, and getting rid of excess nutrients is the true, lasting cure here.
So, I want to leave you with this one question to chew on today. Take a really hard look at your tank tonight. Will your reef's ecosystem actually remain stable? Or are your daily feeding habits and those little dead spots in your flow setting the perfect stage for the next flatworm boom? The power to protect your reef is entirely in your hands, right there in your daily maintenance routines. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep observing, keep those tanks clean, and I will see you on the next one.